Okay, these are the stages for my lighting and look development. Stage one is the story. Keeping this really simple was very important, so I had a good direction of when I was making it. The story is humanity has destroyed Earth, and in search of a new planet, the ship that they were traveling on was struck by an asteroid. Stage two, which was the composition. I wanted to be very wary of the mood and setting I would have for the scenes, so I took a minute to look over my condensed references and looking at contrast, especially in this image. Also, how light rays can be used in a scene, especially to direct the viewer's eye. How I can incorporate atmospheres from planets, specifically how to compose them in an image. Window references were also very important. I knew I wanted to include a window, so I took all of my window references and I condensed them down into these two images, which I thought were the best, including this much smaller window, which framed the scene really, really well. My primary references were also very influential in this stage. They were the origins of how I created a space story in the first place. I got some really cool ones at night, including a lunar eclipse. I then sketched it all up in a really, really rough Photoshop document, having the main focus being the planet, with people being contrasted against the planet, the asteroid, light beams, and the bridge pointing towards the planet. The impact through the ship in the top left, and the asteroid that's actually damaged the ship, all to create a triangular composition. Using this rough draft, I moved on to the block out. As this is not going to be marked, I'm not going to spend much time talking about this. I took a bunch of time and I looked for assets and I arranged them into the similar composition that I made the sketch. Okay, number 4, which is the main focus for the image, which was the planet. I took some time and I looked over all of my shot deck references for planets with and without rings, looking at the glow on the edges of the surface, figuring out how to create that eerily creepy effect that you can get from looking at planets from afar. While I'm doing this, I'm kind of thinking about how I could possibly make this in Maya, but right now I was just observing. Fast forward to the actual planet, I made a separate area light, which was specifically used to light the atmosphere, which was done with a volumetric atmosphere with the color blue. And using the backlight for the atmosphere, I was able to make that really cool curve around the dark side of the planet. For the other area lights, this one was the main one, which illuminated the main part of the planet. The smaller one was used to illuminate the ring slightly more than the actual planet, as well as having the color blue to make it suit the scene more. Moving on to a very dominant part, the light ray, I went back to my references. As the light ray was the primary focus for this image, working with the triangular composition, I took some references from both ShotDeck and Pinterest, as well as going back to my scene as a whole inspirations. Because the asteroid has such force when breaking through the ship, it's actually chipped off pieces of the fan blade. And I found when I lit these, it gave a really cool contrasting effect with the background. The actual light ray image consisted of a area light with directionality, as well as a couple masked volumetrics. I split these off into 3 sections to redirect the view to the triangular composition I keep talking about. In relation, for the next step to the light ray is the asteroid. This is one of the highlighting features for the image. So I pointed a white area light towards the asteroid and it gave it a really cool effect of receiving light from outside the spaceship, as well as having some backlight of an alarm that shows it's integrated into the scene. Talking about the alarm, stage 7, which is the actual alarm light. This was done by a simple area light linked towards just the bridge in particular, using directionality to create a very cool fall-off effect. This frame here was specifically not light linked, so I could get that really cool contrasting against the red background. Number 8, the planet light. The light that was coming off the planet was essentially just an area light. It needed to make sure that it was the exact same color as the planet. as well as not being too overpowering so that it distracts from the main points. To enforce the mood I wanted to go for the scene, I added some mood enhancing effects, inspired by some effects I had observed from my references. These consisted of floating humans I had drawn up in Photoshop earlier, as well as ghost frames, which I used on the asteroid and on some structural frames that are surrounding the ship. All of these were used to enforce an eerily tragic scene of a disaster in space. For the final part of my artistic lighting is the progression stills. I used these to keep track of what I was liking and what I wasn't liking in the scene, and it was very, very helpful because I all had it in one place, allowing me to record my ideas by just annotating the image. Quickly moving on to the motorbike task, this is me assigning all the materials to the objects in the scene, and then matching the color for the lower tank. I did this by aligning both the images in the same orientation and experimenting with the hue, saturation, and value until I got something that looked pretty much identical to the reference image. For the sticker, I just had to make sure that I bent it at the correct angle because I could see that there was much more stretched out than the actual sticker that was provided. Onto the visor, I actually noticed that the Fresnel was much lighter than what I originally had. So I played around with the ramps and the opacities until I got something that looked very close to the reference. Thank you for watching. This was one of my favorite projects so far.